Hello and welcome back to Culture Cust, brought to you by Hype Magazine. Culture Cust is a podcast brought to you by Hype Magazine. In this podcast, we're going to be shining a light on influential figures, particularly in the youth culture. And of course, as mentioned, I did say that this is a content creator edition. So if you want to know the ins and outs of how to work around your content creation, you are definitely in the right spot. And of course, today I am chilled with the most amazing human being. But before I get to that, I am your host and I go by the name of Nomi the Boss Chick. With that being said, I am joined by the amazing Dan Corder.
Hello.
He is a radio personality and an emerging television personality.
Thank you so much for having me. It's
Thank
such
you
a treat.
for coming. How are you doing?
I'm tired. I've got TV makeup on because
imagine.
we're recording the first episode this afternoon of the show, and the first episode of the Dan Corder Show on eNCA is out tonight at 9. So it's a big day, but I've just stopped
Yeah.
thinking about Jacob Zuma, the ANC, and the DA to be with you.
Thank you so much for coming through. Without wasting any more time, right, before we get into the nitty-gritties of content creation, I just want to find out from you, like, your childhood. I know you grew up in Cape Town.
Yeah.
How was that? How was that leading up to university days?
Yeah, so I did technically grow up in Cape Town, but to a lot of people I just say that I grew up at UCT because both my parents are academics. I was like born on campus.
Yeah.
Like I arrived to orientation and people were trying to tell me about the Ikeys and I was like, I've been supporting that rugby team since I was 1. Like you got nothing to give me.
Yeah.
But it was really wonderful. My parents are smart people who emphasize curiosity and getting knowledge almost as like a moral. Like if you're a good person, you will go and learn and read. It's like sinful to be ignorant, basically.
Absolutely, yeah.
Which was high pressure when I was very young, but
Yeah.
now I've got my whole career because of it. And when I was at UCT, I signed up to UCT Radio because I found university excessively boring. But that was more my fault than the university.
Yeah,
I just hadn't
yeah.
found what I wanted to study, and then did UCT Radio. Then from there got picked up by Good Up FM, and then ended up as 5FM's breakfast host. And then, as I'm sure we're about to talk about, I started TikToking about a year ago,
Yes.
which led into YouTube, and suddenly people shouting at me, who on earth are we supposed to vote for? And now the Dan Corder Show tonight on eNCA starts.
That is huge. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
So today I was expecting the whole TikTok look.
You guys couldn't afford the beanies.
Yeah. Oh,
The beanies have got their own rider.
Okay. But I want to know the reasoning behind the stacking of the beanies. Dan, let us know.
So last year on 5FM on the breakfast show, I kind of realized that we as South Africans had become normalized or desensitized to load shedding. And so I was like, we can't do this. Load shedding cannot be normalized. It's terrible. We need to
Yeah.
hold the government to account. And so I thought, this isn't a protest, but I thought, how can I do something that will make people realize how much load shedding we had? And I realized if I shaved my head bald
Okay.
and then said, I will not get a haircut until the next day that South Africa gets 7 days of full week with power on, no load shedding.
Okay.
As my hair grows and I look more and more ridiculous, because there's no fade, there's no shaving. My girlfriend nearly left me. I looked like Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. It was so, there were side-by-side pictures. It was so
Yeah,
rough.
yeah.
And so my hair was growing out because we were getting load shed all the time. And then one day I was shooting a TikTok and I just looked terrible. So I put a beanie on because
Okay.
my hair was so out of control. And then in the comments, once I posted the video, somebody said, you're playing with your beanie, you're changing its position every time you change the cut, every time you shoot a new piece.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that's funny. So then the next time I moved the beanies around a lot as a gag, as a visual gag, along with what I was saying, people found it very funny. And then I added a second and then a third because they were lying around the house. And now the beanies have their own lore. They have super fans. I get attacked if I don't
Of course,
wear
because
them.
I'm thinking, what are you doing here without your beanies?
There are counts in the comments of how many times I change them.
wow.
People have deep theories. Like people often say, like, if Dan if Dan wears all 3 beanies in the same shape without changing them the whole episode, it's because he's serious. He's talking about something serious. It's no laughing matter.
Standing on business. So
yeah.
earlier on, you spoke about UCT, right? And I know you did campus radio, which is something that I did too,
Oh, amazing.
actually. So I wanted us to speak about the transition from campus radio to commercial radio, because you were
Yes.
with 5FM for 3 years.
I was.
How did your journey begin, like when it came to campus radio?
Yeah, so as as I said, I was really bored at UCT,
Yeah.
and then the one day there was one of those campus club and society sign-up days, and I was trying to get people to sign up to the debating union, which, as I'm sure you can imagine, was very unsuccessful because
Yeah.
nobody wants to sign up to the debating union. That doesn't sound like fun, but I love debating. And so I eventually convinced somebody to sign up for the debating union and they said I would sign up to their thing. And I didn't even think about it and wrote it down. And then the next day, I awoke to 1,000 Rand missing from my student account. Because that was the sign-up cost for UCT Radio.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, well, I should better go now. And then I really, really loved it. And cut to a year later, I was actually doing it was funny, I was doing a talk radio show about Roads Must Fall. And having lots of the 4 lists on to talk and whatever. And then Good Up FM called me and said, we love you, but we don't want you to do anything that you're talking about. None of it. We want you to come on and be an entertainment music presenter.
Nice.
And so I started on Weekend Breakfast. And it was interesting because radio, when you hit commercial, is a completely different beast. You really need to think about certain basic professional things you have to execute very cleanly, which you don't have to on campus. You have to think about the content that you're making being for a far broader and more diverse audience with different kinds of lives than just a university audience. And you've got to sound like the station, however much you can, while still being authentic to yourself. So it was quite a transition.
I can imagine, because I know with campus radio, most of the times we do what we want to do.
Yeah.
We get away with so much, like, give me extra 10 minutes, I'll be done, you know. But with that being said, what would you say your challenges were, just like maneuvering 5FM, being there for 3 years and hosting this breakfast show? Because breakfast is huge, Dan. You kickstart our day. You know what I mean? You make or break our day.
100%.
So what would you say was your biggest challenge in that?
So when I was at Good Up FM, I did 2 years of breakfast there. So breakfast itself was not new. But moving to 5FM, going straight to the breakfast show, moving to Joburg from Cape Town, where I come from, that was like a call out for the Springboks.
Yeah.
It was just like, that's what you're going to do now. And I think the biggest challenge was similar to the Good Up one, but way bigger, which is how you can have a national breakfast show, and you'll know this from radio. You always need to feel local to a listener. You need to sound like you're in their car, going down their street.
And you sound like their friend.
Going to their job, experiencing their city. And I had to do that, but for all the cities in South Africa at the same time. I had to make everybody across the country feel involved and included, and like the show was about their life, even if they were in Joburg and we were talking about Kimberley, or Durban and we were talking about Gqeberha. So that was super challenging, but it was something I really enjoyed.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about using radio for good. What does that mean?
Radio and all media, I guess, but particularly radio is such a phenomenal platform, and it is the most real feel platform.
Yeah.
Because if you're sitting in your car driving to work and your friend is talking to you, or if the radio is talking to you, it sounds like your friend. Like there's no sense of, oh, I can see the screen, this is an act, it's a performance, it's an artifice, it's happening over there. And so you have an enormous amount of power when you're invited into the cars of 1 million people every morning. And then when you're choosing your content, you've really got to think, is this going to make people feel happy, inspired, comforted? Am I telling them useful things? Am I straying too much into what I care about, not caring deeply what others care about? You're kind of like the nation's therapist. And so you've got to be very gentle with all of them.
Yeah. So now that journey has ended.
Yeah.
I know I saw your clip on TikTok. Where you were crying, you almost cried, and you were just so emotional about it. Because I know that's how I felt when I left campus radio. I was just like, oh my word, what's next? How did that make you feel now that this chapter has ended?
Yeah, it's always hard. I cried when I left Good Hope too, because it's such a personal relationship with the audience. Again, it's like they're on the WhatsApp line, they're on the phone, they're at the events. And I always say that the best shows of any kind are built by people including the audience, because 1 million people with all their different lived experiences can make a way better show with all their stories and experiences than 4, 5, 6 people in a room. And so I was really sad, and I was also really going to miss my team. I love those guys, Madly Tabo, Oli, Eob, Sanele, like fabulous workers, incredible radio practitioners. And then just this weekend, having quit 5 a week ago, I was on a walk in a park, and someone said, hey, I just want you to know that you remember when you changed your intro song for a wedding? That was my wedding. And I was like, oh, I've never met you, let's hug. And that's the kind of relationship you can make on radio when the show is about our lives, the broadcasters, and also the audience. And that's why I cried.
Yeah, because we sit there and we tell you our real life stories. Those are real, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
eNCA.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. How did you always know that that was going to be it for you? Did you know that, okay, eNCA is my next move?
No.
Or did that come out of nowhere?
So I always wanted to make late night
Oh.
shows. It's been my dream. I was obsessed with late night since before Trevor Noah got the Daily Show. I was watching Jon Stewart and John Oliver, and then Trevor also phenomenal. And I've always been obsessed with the news and obsessed with making people laugh. And so for me, that's always what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But particularly recently, there's no tradition of that in South Africa. There were older shows like Loyiso Gola's show a while ago, but like there's no tradition of that here. And I thought I'd never, ever, ever get that chance. And then because of TikTok and YouTube giving me the creative freedom to make that kind of content, I suddenly started having meetings with TV networks, but most of them were not brave. They were like, we like you, but we don't want you to do that. We want you to do this kind of generic show. And I kept having to say no, which made me really sad because I was like, it's still TV. And then it was probably only like 5 weeks ago, I'd got turned down, or I had a disagreement with another network, and a producer just said, just email eNCA. Just email them and see.
Just give it a try, yeah.
And so I emailed them, and 7 minutes later they called me, and they were like, in fact, my current boss now says, I think you're a wizard. Because they'd been watching me that morning.
Sure.
And then suddenly I had appeared in their emails, and we went in for a meeting, and they let me do late night. And so it's the dream. It's the absolute dream on a network that is a news network that does push boundaries. So I'm so excited.
I'm so excited for you, Dan. Congratulations once again. I think you deserve it. You make amazing content.
Thank you.
With that being said, though, right, from breakfast to now going to late night show, how does that, like, how do I put it? How are you navigating that? What's the difference between the two? Like, you know, how did you kind of transition from, okay, breakfast is different from late night.
Yes.
So then how are you getting yourself into that mode of, okay, this is late night, this is different. It's not radio anymore. It's not breakfast. It's not a certain way.
Yeah.
How are you kind of navigating?
Well, firstly, I'm not sleep deprived for the first time in 6 years. I was just on the phone with a friend of mine who I was on the breakfast show at Good of FM with, and we were talking about how when you are doing a breakfast show every morning for 5-6 years, you feel hungover all the time. And to recover from that, you need to sleep for 2 days on a weekend, but then you don't have a weekend. So you're in this endless sacrificial cycle. The fact that I've had enough sleep is phenomenal. But the fundamental difference between late night and breakfast radio is that I'm writing my scripts down to the joke, thinking about the exact word, and of course, because it's TV from radio, thinking about the visual and the audio visual.
Yeah.
Fortunately, it's been a soft landing because my team that makes the issue on YouTube is the team. Ian said took all of us, so that's great. So I've got my 2 guys doing research and editing. But also, fortunately, because of what we've been doing on YouTube and TikTok, we've been making this kind of stuff already. And fortunately, eNCA said, just do it. We'd love to see it. Yeah.
Dude, that is so cool, right? So, with that being said, you mentioned the Daily Show earlier on, and I just wanted to find out from you, what do you think the difference is between South African late night shows and things like the Daily Show? You know, what do you see the difference between the two?
Yeah.
Is that correct English?
Yes.
Yeah,
I
okay.
mean,
Okay.
I'm too tired. You can speak in Zulu and I wouldn't mind. So there's not a tradition of late night political satire in South Africa. So there are lots of late night shows, but they're like call-in interviews with audience, or they're like a big guest.
Yeah.
Whereas what late night in America has done so well is make a political satire show where you talk about the news, but you're talking about it like a normal human being, making lots of jokes, doing commentary, doing skits and gags and bits. That's what I've always wanted to do. That's the difference.
So, given that now you're like, well, we know you from TikTok. I know you from TikTok,
Yes.
basically, right? TikTok is so, like, you can find anything else but anything political related, right? And you decided, okay, I'm going to start doing this content and I want to be great. And you blew up. What was the strategy behind that? Did you plan it, or was it just something of, okay, I'm passionate about politics and I just want to create content around that?
That was the one. There was no strategy at all. I just was like, my girlfriend literally said to me, Dan, I'm so bored of you because none of my friends knew as much about South African politics and news as me, but I suspected that that was because they hadn't found digestible ways to enjoy it. And so I was like, well, then I'm just going to do that so that my friends will talk to me about this stuff. And then I had this phenomenal response. And I mean, I talk about everything. Like, many people met me for the first time because I basically held South Africa's hand through the World Cup.
Sure.
And there were women texting me being like, my boyfriend loves me more now because I can talk about tactics and I just copied you.
For sure. Sure.
So I love talking about everything. So it is going to be all news. Like we have a big feature tomorrow on the fact that many people's wigs are being stolen from their heads in Joburg and Cape Town at the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about that. It's not necessarily politics, but it's worth talking about.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes,
so
I like that.
It's
I like
just
that
everything, but there was no strategy.
I like that. So with that being said then, again, how do you navigate the social media space versus the traditional media? How do you...
So it's extremely different. It's extremely different. When you're working on just yourself, you can say whatever you want because what you're really working on is who you are, your brand. But when you're in a traditional media institution or a legacy media institution, as I said earlier with Five and Good Hope, you have to think about that the station is a beast and the audience has a relationship with the station. And so you must still be yourself, but you must find your authentic voice within the broader station voice or offering or whatever it's called. And that's quite a careful thing to think about. I was extremely lucky when I joined Five, which most people think of as kind of like a music and entertainment station, that the station manager who hired me said, we want you to do that, but we also want you to talk about the news because we think young people actually do care. They just need a young person to talk about it in the right way.
Absolutely.
And so I was encouraged to do that. But you always got to think, what is the broader identity of the company?
So then what are your feelings about both? What are your feelings about social media on its own and your traditional media?
I love traditional media. It performs an extremely important role. I'm not very good at it. Or at least I don't want to be. Like, hard news journalists are the most important things in the world.
Yeah.
They're the ones who go find out the truth and build their reputations on telling the truth and make sure that they do tell the truth as much as possible.
Yeah.
And you have to have that. I don't think that there is a choice there. You have to have that. But I will continue to do social media, TikTok and YouTube, along with the eNCA, and I always will, because that's something where you can build exactly what you want, and there's a personal relationship with the audience. Also, technology is slowly going in that direction. TV and radio are doing phenomenally well. There's no such thing as them truly being badly downturned by social media, but they're coexisting, right?
Yeah.
And so I hope that the rest of my life will be traditional media saying, we want you to do you, and meaning it, and also doing stuff online.
I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear you. So then, moving on to you juggling so many things.
Yeah. I'm a little obsessed.
You're literally like a man of many hats, right?
Yeah, literally.
I know you do filmmaking again, apparently.
So I have made a film before.
Nice.
My girlfriend is a superstar filmmaker, though. She's very, very good.
Oh,
so
wow.
generally I'm on set, like, handing her a Coke Zero. But yes, I did direct one film when I was in university that was about linguistic and racial exclusion at Stellenbosch University called Leicester, that really went insanely viral, and credit to Open Stellenbosch, the organization, who were, I mean, we were literally, me and my team were like a microphone amplifying there.
Sure.
We were not putting on our own kind of layer or lens, where we didn't go to Stellenbosch, we speak English, and we're not black, still not.
Nothing has changed.
Michael Jackson, your era is over. Or maybe Rachel Dolezal is the better reference. Okay.
Yeah.
We just managed to figure out a film which perfectly expressed Open Stellenbosch's experiences.
Nice.
And yeah, it made a bit of a ruckus. Yeah.
Where do we catch it? Where do we watch it?
It's on YouTube. It feels like a long time ago now. I think it was 2014 or 2015.
Sure.
But yeah, it was a worldwide news headline, and ended up there was a parliamentary investigation in Stellenbosch University when Julius Malema et al., all the leaders of the major parties, like, dragged Stellenbosch University. Sorry, guys. Because of it. It was really crazy. Yeah.
So then how do you juggle all of this? That's really all I want to know. You know, now you have eNCA. Creating content on social media requires consistency. How do you juggle all of these different roles that you have to play and show up to?
So I'm really obsessed. Like, I have a deeply obsessive nature, and my sisters often say, you should get a hobby, you're 30. And I say, but like, I love reading the news, thinking about the news, talking about the news, and making jokes about it. It's like deeply wired into my body. So it's genuinely a way of life to a disturbing extent. Like, supper doesn't have to happen if I'm writing a funny thing about Malema at roast last night DJing. So that's kind of how it happens. What's great about the eNCA show is that it's very much the same kind of thing as the social media. It was very challenging when I was a radio presenter because I'd have to make a whole different kind of show.
Yeah.
That was extremely exhausting. But I'm very lucky because my girlfriend is also a phenomenal artist and a creator. She's a filmmaker. And so we're like a creator couple, and we deeply understand each of our obsessions and how to support each other when we need support, because we both need that support sometimes ourselves. So I've been extremely lucky. I think very few people would understand me the way that Jessie does, and vice versa, because we are the same in that way. Yeah.
So like for anyone that's watching really and they want to navigate the space of content creation, what would you say to them? Like, where do you stand with that?
So the people I enjoy the most online, and the people who I think are almost always the most successful, are people who actually have something to say that is what they want to say. Obviously, there are some people who are phenomenal comedians or phenomenal singers or whatever. If you've got a phenomenal talent, do it. My TikTok is drowning in a very specific niche because I watch puppet comedians.
Oh, wow.
There are a couple in the world, and I'm not talking like Jeff Dunham, who are phenomenally funny in the way that the artistry of the puppetry and the jokes.
Yeah.
And that's just what I love. And they only did that because they fought through doing puppetry and also being funny and tried to figure it out. So there's some people who are comedians, there's some people who can do a shtick like a character, like Tully Babes or whatever, and they must do that. But if you are trying to be yourself online, you need to figure out kind of what you like to talk about and what the audience wants you to talk about, because sometimes they're different. So there are niche content creators who love talking about their thing, and they kind of have to accept that their niche is not such a big niche.
For sure.
Whereas my good friend Nick Hammond is the food man, and he loves talking about cooking, eating, finding out about food, and he made that his Instagram, and I think he's got 100,000 followers in 3 months.
Sure.
So like, you got to figure out what you authentically really want to talk about, because it, as you said, requires an enormous amount of consistency and work. It's work. It's a lot of effort. So if you're going to put in a lot of work and a lot of effort, you better be enjoying it, because you're going to feel tired some days and not like you don't want to do it.
Absolutely.
But you've got to be able to go, no, I enjoy doing this.
Yeah. I tried it once and I quit the first day. I was like, I am not doing this.
You can't quit on the first day. That is the wrong day to quit.
I tried. I was like, you know what? Okay, I'll keep going. But I still have content that's chilling in my drafts.
Yes.
So hopefully one day when I feel like, you know what, let's push this out, then it will get
but,
to that.
I mean, one of my dear friends, Zetu Ola, who is an icon and a legend.
Shout out to Zetu.
Zetu is amazing. She started doing like mommy content and then got over it, and then did political gags and then got over it, and then did fashion and then pop culture. Like if she had stopped at the beginning, we wouldn't have Zetu.
You're right. You're so right. I like that. Did you hear that? So I want to know your creative process behind everything that you do. So basically, for your social media content, and now that you're moving to eNCA and doing the late night show, how's your creative process for both worlds?
For sure. So it always starts in one of two ways. The first way is I see a news story and I go, can I swear on this show? Probably not. No, it's fine. No, I will be this man. I'm extremely filthy mouthed off mic. So either I see a piece of news and I go, yo, this is funny, or this is important, or I want to talk about this. Or I realize a thought that I've had brewing for a while about the world. And then I think like, cool, how can I best tell this? And so you start with that. You start with what you want to talk about. And you figure out how you want to tell it. But the first thing I do is I figure out what emotion best expresses how I feel about this. If I'm upset about this, like Uyenen's tragic murder, then I'm going to be upset. If I think this is hilarious, like the Cape Independence Party, the video will start with me laughing. Because I think that like human connection is so much about emotional expression towards each other.
Absolutely.
And so much of online people start like very serious or very plain or very whatever. And it's like, why have you taken the humanity out of what you're doing? And then if it is TikTok especially or YouTube, I just workshop it. I tell a joke, don't like that. Tell another joke, don't like that. Tell a joke, okay, keep that. And then I keep talking. So I'm doing it in the moment. And similarly now with the eNCA show, because we script a lot of it, I write the story, and as I'm writing the story, I add a joke, take it out, add a joke, take it out, what do I think about this? Then I chill on it, and then the next day I come back to it. And then fortunately, my brother is the show editor.
Oh, nice.
And he is very funny. Differently funny to me, but he can also spot a good joke from a bad one.
For sure.
So sometimes I'll just sit with him and start telling a joke, and then he'll say, oh, you could say this, and then we're just laughing together. There are a couple of lines in the script for the first episode of the show, which James came up with because we were talking nonsense to each other. So yeah, that's how it goes.
Oh, nice. That sounds very cool.
It's fun. It's really lame when you're sitting there and you're like, I know there's a joke here, I just don't know what it is. I can't come up with it.
I can't get it. So with that being said, right, again, going back to you juggling so many things, when do you get the time to focus on your mental health?
That's such a good question.
Yeah. When do you get who's
That's
that?
such
You have to be a
good
boyfriend.
question.
You have to be a funny guy.
I like being those
Yeah.
things. I go for lots of walks, almost every day, and long walks, like minimum 3Ks or it doesn't count, but usually more like 6 or 8Ks.
Okay.
And they have to be in proper nature, like wild nature. Like there are a lot of parks in Johannesburg. Some of them are very manicured. Some of them are much more let it grow. And I go for walks in those. And I live by this Latin phrase, which is solvitur ambulando, which means it is solved by walking.
So what is it?
Solvitur,
Solvitur.
ambulando.
Ambulando.
Ambulando, yeah.
Ambulando.
Like an ambulance.
Oh,
so
okay.
it is solved by walking. And the idea
Nice.
there is whatever you're dealing with, go for a walk.
Yeah.
And there's science to back that up. When you walk as a human being, the endorphins, the pheromones, the life balance, the ease of body, all that happens. And it can really help you find a lot of peace. So 5 days out of 7, I'll be walking. And then also Jessie, my partner, and I spend a lot of time together talking and watching shows. We're watching Mad Men at the moment because she still hasn't seen it, which is crazy. And then we've got a core group of dear friends, very small group of friends, and we see each other like every week. We just went and watch challenges.
Oh, nice.
So that's the mental health.
Okay, cool. I like that. So I think, just to echo what you said, I think in this industry, like in this fast-paced industry that we're in, it all comes down to compartmentalizing things.
Totally.
And being intentional and making time for the things that matter and not forgetting yourself and your mental health.
And not reading the comments.
Yes. I agree.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I want to know I don't want to say what's next, but what are you hoping to achieve, in everything that you're doing? You've done radio, you're doing television now. What is the end goal for you?
I love late night TV. So if I can do late night TV 4 or 5 nights a week forever, I probably would. I love unpacking the world and trying to talk about it and think about it and make jokes about it. And late night TV is also a very South African thing because we know how to laugh. We're the funniest country on earth. We find joy to survive pain.
Yeah.
We're very good at it. So there's that. I'm sure I'll end up on talk radio at some point. I can just see it will probably happen.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but I think ultimately I just want to, if we have a big question of the rest of your career, I want to be able to go, what I did today was good for South Africa. It was healthy for South Africa to have that show. Whether it's to understand it, to not feel alone, maybe it's because at some points I'll say, no, that's wrong or that's right.
Yeah.
And I'm impressing what I think is good or bad about the world and trying to use whatever power I have for good. That's important to me.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. So we are pressed for time. I'd like to keep you here forever.
Sorry.
But before I let you go, right, I have 3 questions here.
Yes.
Are you ready?
Yeah. Oh, I
Not
don't know
even
what they
3,
are.
actually. 1 question.
Okay, good.
Yes. So, if you could have dinner with any past 3 or present political figures, who would they be?
In the world?
In the world, and why?
In the world?
Okay, let's say South Africa. Let's dumb it
No,
down
no,
to
no.
SA.
I can do the world.
Okay, let's do the world. Let's do the world.
I'd love to speak with Oliver Tambo. Oliver Tambo, one of the great founders and pillars of the African National Congress, who's still doing phenomenal work even into the 80s. One of the very few people who deserves to have an airport named after him.
Yep.
Oliver Tambo. So yeah, I'd love to have him for dinner. I'd love to have Jacob Zuma for dinner.
Oh, wow.
Just because I have so many questions.
That's going to be so interesting.
And I don't know if he'd answer them.
No.
But I think how he'd deal with them would genuinely be really deeply fascinating. Yeah, love Jacob Zuma. And then should I do one international? Just to throw it out there.
Yes.
One international. I would love to have dinner with Barack Obama, but not for the obvious reason.
Okay.
I think I'd love to have dinner with Barack Obama to ask him about the deeply evil things that America did during his presidency, like all of those drone bombings and all that he had to sign off on. And I'd like to know how he balances a legacy where Americans, or at least Democrat Americans, think he was the best. And a lot of the world think that he was just another American president. So Jacob, Barack, and Oliver would be a mad table.
Yeah, that's a mad combo.
It's a biggie.
It'd be very interesting, though.
Yeah.
And there you have it. Dan, thank you so much for coming
It's
through.
been such a treat. Great questions. Thank you.
You know what? I tried.
No, they were good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dan. Where do we find you on social media?
At Dan Corder on TikTok, Dan Corder on air everywhere else. Yeah.
Perfect. Continue doing the great work of helping us know who to vote for.
I will never tell you to vote for.
No,
I'll
absolutely.
just tell you what you should
but
be
you're
thinking
steering
about.
us in the right direction, and that's all that matters, right?
Yes, yes.
And thank you so much, Dan. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks. It's
having
genuinely
you.
been such a treat.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And there you have it, Hype Fam. Thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time, remember, if it's hype, it is hype. Therefore, believe the hype. We'll see you in the next episode. Goodbye.
Great tagline.
And I just came up with it.
And you know, she just got really upset because obviously I lied. You know, she wasn't gonna know where I was that weekend.
Yeah.
Just a lot.
Yeah.
And then she left for church, and I went.
I'm doing it anyway. I'm going there.
My name is Rebel. Okay, I was going.
Yeah.
So Saturday I snuck out. You know, I was home with my dad. I snuck out. I went to go play. I came back. She never found out about it. She probably will after this now.